Dick Van Dyke, the timeless icon whose effervescent spirit has illuminated screens for nearly 7 decades, recently opened a window into one of the most cherished chapters of his extraordinary life: his profound friendship with the legendary Walt Disney. At 99 years young, Van Dyke remains a beacon of joy and resilience, hosting intimate gatherings that blend philanthropy with personal storytelling. During a recent charity event at his sun-kissed California residence, dubbed the Vandy High Tea, the beloved actor didn't just entertain. He transported guests back to an era when imagination knew no bounds, sharing anecdotes that painted Walt Disney not as a distant mogul, but as a kindred soul brimming with childlike wonder. In a world often cynical about show business legends, Van Dyke's words serve as a poignant reminder of the human connections that fuel creativity, revealing a bond that transcended professional collaborations to touch the very essence of joy and innovation. The Vandy High Tea was more than a fundraiser. It was a celebration of Van Dyke's illustrious career, a 2-hour tapestry of Q&A sessions, lively sing-alongs, and reflective tributes that left attendees spellbound. Picture the scene: a sprawling garden alive with the hum of conversation, tables laden with delicate china and steaming pots of Earl Grey as Van Dyke, dapper in a crisp linen suit, his trademark twinkle undimmed by time, held court among admirers. Special guests joined for harmonious performances, their voices weaving through classics like Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious from Mary Poppins, a film that forever cemented Van Dyke's place in cinematic history. Yet amid the melodies and laughter, it was the quieter moments of reminiscence that resonated deepest. As the sun dipped low, casting golden hues over the assembly, Van Dyke turned his gaze inward, recounting relationships with luminaries who shaped his path. And none loomed larger in his memory than Walt Disney, the visionary whose empire of enchantment began with a mouse and grew into a global phenomenon. Van Dyke's connection to Disney was no fleeting acquaintance but a deep, resonant friendship forged in the fires of shared passion. "I got to know Walt pretty well," Van Dyke confided, his voice carrying the warmth of genuine affection, "and we're probably the last person alive who did, or at least one of the very few." In an industry where collaborations often dissolve after credits roll, their rapport endured, built on mutual respect and an uncanny alignment of spirits. They first crossed paths in the early 1960s, when Disney handpicked Van Dyke for the iconic role of Bert the Chimney Sweep in Mary Poppins. It was a gamble. Van Dyke, fresh off vaudeville stages and television sketches, stepping into a lavish musical fantasy opposite Julie Andrews. But Disney saw in him what audiences would soon adore: an everyman charm laced with acrobatic flair, a performer who could tumble through chalk-drawn worlds with the grace of a poet. Rehearsals became playgrounds of invention, with Disney sketching ideas on napkins and Van Dyke improvising Cockney accents that elicited gales of laughter. What began as a professional alliance blossomed into late-night brainstorming sessions at Disney's Burbank studio, where ideas flowed like the ink from Walt's ever-present pencil. At the heart of their bond was a profound emotional kinship, one that Van Dyke articulated with disarming simplicity: "We decided that emotionally we were both 13 years old, and that's why we love to do children's entertainment." Imagine 2 grown men, titans in their fields, giggling over plot twists like schoolboys plotting a prank. Disney, the pioneer of American animation whose innovations, from synchronized sound and Steamboat Willie to the multiplane camera, revolutionized filmmaking, harbored a perpetual youthfulness that mirrored Van Dyke's own. Walt wasn't just a producer, he was a big kid, as Van Dyke fondly recalled, just so full of enthusiasm. Stories abound of Disney's hands-on zeal, pacing animation floors at dawn, voice-acting Mickey Mouse with infectious energy, or whisking collaborators to Disneyland's construction site for impromptu tours. Van Dyke remembered one such escapade: a moonlit drive through the nascent park, Disney at the wheel, expounding on dreams of Tomorrowland while Van Dyke marveled at the audacity of it all. These weren't mere meetings, they were sparks of synergy, where Disney's boundless optimism ignited Van Dyke's comedic ingenuity, birthing scenes that still enchant generations. Their collaboration extended beyond Mary Poppins to other Disney endeavors, each imprinting Van Dyke's career with magic. In 1964's Mary Poppins, Van Dyke's portrayal of Bert wasn't just a sidekick, it was a masterclass in multifaceted performance: sweep, storyteller, dancer extraordinaire, infused with Disney's directive to keep it light, keep it fun. The film's success, grossing over $100 million and snagging 5 Oscars, validated their vision, but the real triumph was the joy it spread. Van Dyke later starred in Disney's Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, 1968, Another whimsical adventure where his turn as the zany inventor Caractacus Potts channeled that same 13-year-old exuberance. Directed under Disney's watchful eye, though Walt passed before its release, the film echoed their ethos, blending live-action spectacle with fantastical elements to whisk audiences away on flights of fancy. Van Dyke's interactions with Disney during pre-production were legendary, endless revisions to songs, costume fittings that devolved into tickle fights, and philosophical chats about storytelling's power to heal and inspire. He taught me that animation isn't just drawings, it's breathing life into dreams, Van Dyke once reflected in a separate interview, a lesson that permeated his approach to every role thereafter. Walt Disney's influence on Van Dyke was as much personal as professional, shaping not just his work but his worldview. Disney, born in 1901 in rural Missouri, rose from humble sketches to helm a studio that redefined entertainment, all while retaining a humility that endeared him to peers. Van Dyke, who entered show business via radio and Broadway in the 1940s, found in Disney a mentor who championed authenticity over artifice. Their conversations delved into life's big questions: the role of whimsy in a war-weary world, the importance of family in fueling creativity. Disney doted on his daughters Diane and Sharon, much as Van Dyke cherished his 4 children. Van Dyke often credits Disney with instilling a never grow up mantra, one that sustained him through career ebbs, like the 1970s lull post-Mary Poppins, and personal trials, including a battle with alcoholism in the 1980s that he overcame with characteristic grit. Walt showed me enthusiasm is contagious, Van Dyke said at the High Tea, his eyes misting as he evoked memories of Disney's laughter, a sound like bells on a carousel. Today, as Van Dyke approaches his centennial, his reflections on Disney carry added weight, positioning him as a living bridge to Hollywood's golden age. The animation pioneer's legacy, spanning theme parks, television empires and timeless tales like Snow White and Pinocchio, owes much to collaborators like Van Dyke,